In the 1850s, the Salish Sea was a war zone. Once divided, the Coast Salish nations had allied together to oppose the might of the Kwakwaka'wakw and break their grip on the waves forever.
Conquer, surrender, victory, defeat. These deadly battles shaped continents. These are nations at war.
In the late 18th century, a dynamic indigenous civilization at the height of its power became the subject of fascination for people across the planet, where rugged mountains and mist-shrouded forests meet the mighty Pacific Ocean. A nation was born that is still famed for their culture, their artistry, and their power. They are the Kwakwaka'wakw. In a time when the war canoe ruled the waves, the Kwakwaka'wakw were among the most feared and influential nations on the West Coast. Even as the arrival of foreign vessels changed the nature of war and diplomacy across the Pacific Northwest, the Kwakwaka'wakw dominated a region tightly packed with nations too weak to oppose them. However, this success came at a cost. It inspired once divided enemies into a united front against them. In the most important naval battle ever fought on the Salish Sea. The story of this pivotal battle began in the early 1700s. In a time when the First Nations of the Pacific Northwest were largely protected from the chaos raging across North America by mighty ramparts of interlocking mountain chains. This was an era when the Kwakwaka'wakw Nation was the master of the Salish Sea. Though divided politically into regional groups and sovereign communities, they shared a culture, heritage, faith, and dialects of the Kwakwala language.
The Kwakwaka'wakw people are literally means the people that speak the Kwakwala language.
Like many nations of the Pacific Coast, the Kwakwaka'wakw traditional lifestyle is defined as much by their relationship to the sea as the land they call home, with salmon forming the cornerstone of their diet. From the ocean, the Kwakwaka'wakw harvested enough food to sustain large permanent villages without the need for agriculture.
These were a maritime people, even though they lived on the land. They had access to an abundance of food resources. The Northwest Coast culture was one of the richest cultures in the world. Some anthropologists have called it the original affluent society.
The bounty of their homeland allowed Kwakwaka'wakw villages to focus much of their energies on the creation of art and architecture. The Kwakwaka'wakw's artistic endeavors are also key components of the most important event in their communal lives, the potlatch.
The potlatch was integral to everything that we did on the coast. It was a way of validating everything that we owned. Everything happened in front of people, and if it didn't happen in front of people, it wasn't considered valid.
These great gatherings and feasts are not only celebratory and ceremonial, but also political summits where trade and alliances were forged. In the 18th century, chiefs who lavished gifts on guests proved themselves capable of maintaining their people's prosperity. Thanks to partnerships forged in the potlatch, Kwakwaka'wakw villages became major players in the Pacific Northwest's sprawling trade network, trading regularly with the Nachalmouth via overland routes and enjoying great success in maritime commerce, thanks to a key advantage their homeland bestowed them. The Kwakwaka'wakw Nation's combined territory controlled the narrow straits and channels that connect Queen Charlotte Sound and the Salish Sea, a much safer route than braving the waters of the Pacific Ocean.
Everybody's got to pass through Kwakwaka'wakw territory. It's really strategic location, especially for thinking of the movement of goods, of peoples.
Just as their territory put the Kwakwaka'wakw in the perfect position for trade, it also served as an ideal launching pad for fleets of war canoes. In addition to food and slaves for trade or labor, the Kwakwaka'wakw looted valuable artifacts, crafts, and weapons.
Raiding was accomplished by ambitious communities, ambitious families who coveted the wealth of their neighbors.
They would typically take the women and the children as hostages, as slaves, and sometimes they would literally be hostages, so they could trade them back.
The northern Kwakwaka'wakw looted villages belonging to the Wakino, Newhall, and Hiotsu. However, in these northern waters, their warriors faced fierce competition. The Tsimshian, the Haida, and the Clinker, equally famed for their ferocity in battle. The southernmost Kwakwaka'wakw, known collectively as the Lakwiltok, turned their attention south to the Salish Sea, where a mosaic of related but distinct Coast Salish-speaking nations called its shores home. Though they would trade, intermarry, and work together, each Coast Salish nation was composed of sovereign communities who looked out for their interests. These internal divisions made the Coast Salish perfect targets for the Lakwiltok, earning their warriors a dark reputation as the unkillable things.
This is not what people called them. This is what they called themselves. They really took on this fearsome demeanor.
For the Kwakwaka'wakw, fear was a weapon they could wield against their prey. And by the end of the 18th century, their reign of terror would only intensify, as strange visitors brought new weapons that gave the Kwakwaka'wakw raiders the power to wage a devastating war across the Salish Sea.